It's just unhappy sounding. Welcome to E39 Source, Ryan Schultz. My 2005's over there. This is Nick's 2002 E39 M5. And his alternator does not owe him a dime anymore. Let's get in here and take a look at the odometer and we'll see why. If there's even enough power to turn it on. Which there's not. Is the key in there? That could be why. Yeah. It's cooked, but 222,900 miles on this car as an 02. So we've got it on a charger right now, the trunk's in shambles, and it is time to do an alternator. We're assuming that this one's original. We've got a Bosch remanufactured unit from FCP? Five Auto. And what did that cost?
$321.
$321 gets you a reman Bosch from Bab Auto. So I've never done one of these before, but how hard could it be? The only thing that holds these cars together are bolts. So step one is to get the car in the air. If you want to use ramps, if you want to use a jack and jack stands or axle stands, that works too. That's what we did to use the front jacking point. It's the center of the front subframe directly underneath the engine. There's a little divot there where it sticks out. Jack it up, put your stands there. At this point you should have the car in gear, first gear and the emergency brake on, which we'll do here in a moment. And I'm going off a couple reviews, or a couple DIYs online that are in text form. Some of them do it from the top, some of them do it from down under. I don't really care how we do it, it's just gonna get done. But I think we are gonna need to remove the fan and fan clutch, possibly the shroud, possibly the airbox, definitely the underbody splash shields and whatnot. So we're gonna start up here with the fan and fan clutch. You're gonna need the BMW fan clutch removal tool for that, which I have over here. You do not have to have the BMW tool, but you need a very thin 30, I believe it's a 32 millimeter open-ended wrench, and then you need something to hold the bolts on the water pump from rotating. And this is a reverse threaded bolt. When you look down there, there's a nut right there. It's the rusty one. And then you can see those two bolts on top. There's two more on the bottom. It's in a square pattern like this. And we're gonna counter hold two of those and then that'll come off reversely. So the fan clutch on this car came off quite easily. You just have to remember that it's reverse threaded. My tool is a little different. It's got different bolts or different patterns. Like I ended up using that side, but there's also that side. You'll just have to see which one fits your individual vehicle. Set your fan and fan clutch in a safe, dry location and move underneath the car. You're gonna need a 10 millimeter socket and or a Phillips head screwdriver to remove the bottom splash shield. It's just held on. There's one here, there's one here. There's another one in the back. There's another one over there and two more. I think there's a total of 6, maybe 8. And then it comes down and we just pushed it back there behind the car. So then you're looking at your belt drive system, and what you want to do is source, I believe, a 15 millimeter 6-point socket and put it over your tensioner pulley here. I just used the socket on the end of a breaker bar, put it on there and pull it clockwise, so to the left when you're below it. That's going to take the tension off of your serpentine belt, then you're going to be able to work that off. Reason is it's obviously on your alternator there, so we worked it off of the alternator, the power steering pump, the main pulley, the AC compressor's on the secondary, but take it off of all of that. Maybe make yourself a note or a diagram that tells you which way it goes on there, because it's going in and out of all of these, and you want to make sure you put it back on the right way. So we got that out of there. Now we need to move on to actually unbolting the radiator, and I'm going to have to reference my DIY to see what's next now. So now with the belt off, we need to work with the power steering pump a little bit. That is going to be this guy right here, the big pulley, looking back towards the rear of the car. There are 3 13 millimeter bolts that we need to remove. We've got one here on this bracket. There's another one up there in the shadows, just 2 inches above that one. It's also a 13 millimeter. I used an open-ended wrench on. I actually used a 6-point half-inch drive socket on both of these. And then up top in the back, as I'm sliding over, back, well, again in the shadows, I apologize for that. It's right above my finger there. You can kind of see the outline for it. There's another 13 millimeter bolt, and that one's a little bit longer, and then I just used a 6-inch extension, 3/8 drive, just because we're close to the oil sump here, oil pan, so I didn't want to damage any of that. So now with this thing completely loose, like you can see, I can slide it off those guides, and we'll back up so it'll focus better. And the whole power steering pump assembly here is loose. So I'm just going to stick it back on those guides coming out of the upper oil pan just to hold it on there. And I think now we're going to move up to the big bolts that actually hold the alternator in place. So I brought the power steering pump off of its brackets. It's just being suspended by the hoses here for a few moments. And that's so we can access the 16mm bolts that are holding the alternator in. The bolt heads are on the front of the car facing the alternator. There's both 16mm, use a 6-point socket. Here's the bottom one. Your bottom bolt is a lot longer. As you can see, that's probably a 5 or 6 inch bolt. So there's the bottom one. The top one is kind of up there in the shadows. We did remove this guy. I don't know if I talked about that on video, but it's a T50. There's a little dust shield on that you pop off with a flathead screwdriver if your car still has it. This is the one that, this is the tensioner pulley that we put the 15 or 16, I think it was a 15mm thing on to get the belt off. But this one up here, that's a T50 in there. One of the DIYs said a T45. I'm pretty sure I used a T50. Just unbolt that. I put it over here. It was not difficult at all to get off. Kind of a long bolt that holds it on. But that comes right off. Put that somewhere safe, don't lose it. Reason being, that's how we kind of need to get some access to that top 16mm alternator bolt. So with those two out, I'm gonna have to see what else is holding this guy in here because it's still kind of tight. So once your two long bolts are out of there, that's really all that holds it in. Now we've just got some wires. So right there, there's a big black 17mm plastic nut on the end of that. I'm assuming that is your ground wire. I used an open-ended wrench to remove it while it was up there, which was not easy to do. So you do the bolts first, so it's kind of loose and bouncing around in there. Then you take that 17mm off. Once you get it broken, you can thread it with your hands. And then the last thing is that little connector there. It's got the green, and that's your normal BMW. Pinch the spring-loaded plastic in towards the wires and wiggle it out, and that's it. So here's the old alternator, which we're assuming to be original at 222, and the new one is over there, and it's just going to be the opposite of removal. We're going to plug in the 17mm ground wire, the little loop, put the nut on, plug in the other wire, hold it up there, and then start threading the bolts in. Alright, getting the new one in here is easier said than done. I've had to move the power steering pump all the way down here to get some more room, but once you get it up there, your long bolt goes in the bottom, your shorter 16 goes on top. Then we're ready to take our tensioner here and put that T50 back in. That's going to be the top tensioner pulley. At that point, we're probably going to be ready to work with our belt. Don't forget, obviously, to move your power steering pump back over here and slide it back on its little bolts. Slide the bracket back on the bolts. Replace the two 13s there, another 13 up there in the top, and then it's just a matter of the tensioner and belt. Alrighty guys, this is kind of it. I got the belt back on. Really, that wasn't too bad at all. My T45 pulley's right up there. This car doesn't have the little dust shield that covers it. It's supposed to be there, but it's missing on this one. So if you have it, snap it back on. I found an image on Google for the correct orientation of the belt. Don't try to use this video. I'll put a link to a good image in the description of this video so you can see the correct way to install the belt. The hardest part, honestly, was just getting the alternator to come down. There's not much room with the power steering pump in here. If you need to do a fluid flush, now would be a good time to do that and just take it out, physically remove it from the car, because it would be a lot easier to remove and install the alternator. Also, additionally, on the back of the alternator, there's that 17mm black plastic nut that's for the ground. That thing has to be tight when you leave it. You can't have that loose, it won't work, and it's very difficult to get to that because you've got to install it with it almost in this position. So that was probably the hardest part too. And then of course, don't forget your little positive connector that had the spring clip on it. That's going to be your primary source there. So with all that back together, the belt installed, everything's tight again. I'm going to put the belly pan back on. We're actually putting a new battery in this car too today. And then we'll turn the key and see what happens.
Now this is how you deliver a battery in style. 06 M5 with a little bit of an exhaust change. Just a wee bit. But it's dirty now, but we got blacked out wheels. Blacked out side grille. And of course, if you come around, blacked out grills in the front. As the once Luke would say, Chris Bangle, you're a genius.
So the new battery's in, the alternator's in, everything's buttoned up, the car's back on the ground. Do not forget to put your fan clutch on, or your fan and fan clutch on. And also don't forget to put your oil cap on. We learned that with Melvin's video a couple years ago. Is the keys in there, Nick?
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. We got a clutch stop here on the seat. It lives. Look at that, 222, 928. Had some lifter tick there on startup. Alrighty guys, that's a success. We started it up, drove it a couple miles, no lights on the dash, no battery light, none of that. The alternator, not as bad as I thought actually. There was a couple times when it's just real tight down there, especially initially pulling it down and then putting the new one in, it's very tight. And then that 17mm nut and the big wire on the back of the ground, that was less than ideal, but otherwise not too bad at all. So that's the alternator DIY on the E39 M5. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you guys in a future E39 source video. Take care.
Bye.